All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for logging in and watching. This is our test security and integrity training, Covenant Christian School for the 2020-2021 school year. As you know, CCS participates in the Indiana Battery of Assessments, and it's not long until all of those things roll around, and we will be testing over a period of several months. In the state of Indiana, quite a few things are tied to testing. There's a great deal of accountability for non-public schools. And so the results of our tests are going to be very significant, and they will affect all of us going forward. And of course, these tests are recorded. The data is analyzed on a year-over-year basis. Last year, with the COVID interruption, we didn't have testing, so things are a little out of order this year, and some students will be tested that ordinarily wouldn't, and some students just won't be, they just missed a test, and that data is just not going to be recorded. So in the near future, you'll get the schedule for the testing windows. But we have 3 specific Indiana assessments that we will be giving. The iRead 3, which is to the 3rd grade. It's a fairly short assessment, just takes a couple of days, just an hour or so each day to knock that out. And only 3rd graders will take that test. However, it's a very significant test. Then there is the iLearn battery of tests, and the iLearn covers a variety of subjects from grades 3 through 8. Not everybody receives assessment in the same areas. And of course, we'll go over what those look like and what those subject areas are in the near future. But the important thing is that grades 3 through 8 will all be assessed in iLearn. Then in high school, Indiana is doing away with the iStep Plus, but it's still in effect for this year. So some of our students will be taking the iStep Plus, and this is a graduation exam, you might say. It points toward where a student is. They take it as a sophomore and have an opportunity, if they don't get a test result that's passing, they can take it again as a junior or senior. There's some other courses, for example, our biology end of course exam, which is part of the iLearn battery. So a lot of tests, a lot of moving parts, but that's not really what this video is about. This video is about making certain that our test results are valid and that we go above and beyond to protect our reputation as a school that does everything that we do with integrity. We want to make certain that we don't bring embarrassment or shame to the name of the school for any reason. Because these tests have such a massive impact on education, so many positive things happen when your test results are good, and some really terrible things can happen if your test results don't show improvement year over year. There's a lot of pressure on people to cut corners or to do things that are illegal and wrong in helping to inappropriately boost student scores. And as you know, every once in a while, a situation will kind of become national news or even international news, where a school system or a school has cheated and helped students to get their grades in a way that's not in accordance with the expectations. For example, the city of Atlanta, in the not too distant past, the school system there was rocked with a massive scandal where a culture of cheating pervaded, and many student scores were invalidated, and individuals in leadership in that school, all the way up to the superintendent of public schools, were sent to prison because the states are going to take any cheating, anything that's wrong with the test. They're going to take it very, very seriously, just because there's so much wrapped up to funds and all of the other things. So of course we know that testing, the collection of data is important. It's an important reflection on how well we're doing our job. It's part of that accountability. We are this year just participating in the Indiana Battery of Assessments. However, both of our accrediting agencies require a higher standard of assessment, and we're going to kind of ease into things. But both of our accrediting agencies require that every student in every grade receives some form of assessment every year so that the data is being collected and we can study it as a reflection not of the student but of the work we're doing as a school. And obviously it's important that the data be true, that this is not some, something that's somehow inappropriately influenced by however we're handling things. So let me just share with you a little bit then, and related to that, of our CCS philosophy of assessment. Accountability is one of our bedrock principles, right? Everyone in the school should be accountable. None of us should be, considering ourselves exempt from examination and reflection. So assessment is just part of that accountability, and we embrace it. I know that testing can be a chore, and I know it can be a disruption, but it's an important part of our instructional program. So we need to make sure that our attitude toward it and our words, our actions when it comes time for testing reflect that we're not complaining about it or acting like it's an unnecessary interruption of instruction. It's a core part of instruction. The joke is told, why do they call them professors in college? Well, it's because they don't teach. They just stand up in front of the class and profess things. And if you get it, if you don't get it, no skin off their back. That's just the way that it is. Well, as teachers, we understand that if no change is taking place, then no learning is taking place. And if no learning is taking place, then no teaching took place. It doesn't matter what we did at the front of the classroom. If the students don't learn, and if that can't be reflected in assessments, then we really didn't teach. Whatever we were doing was a waste of time. So this is not something that we're going to take lightly or roll the eyes and say, assessments are here. There's a lot of stress involved in it, and a lot of pressure and a lot of interruption. I understand that, but let's make certain that we embrace it as an important part of what we do as educators. Now, that being said, I know that there's a great deal of fear that can become involved in assessments, and typically the fear from the educator tends to have a very negative effect on the child. So we try to really downplay the negative consequences to testing to the children. Okay, some of these tests are high stakes testing. The iRead 3 won't by itself be a reason for a child not to move on to grade 4, but it's pretty important, and it's going to tell us how that child is educated going forward. And the iStep Plus, if you don't get that passing grade, then the state of Indiana is not going to recognize your diploma. That's high stakes stuff. And we all understand that none of us perform our best when we're stressed out. And if we are communicating stress to our students, it's going to do a couple of things. First of all, it's going to inhibit their ability to do their very best. Number two, it's going to cause, it's human nature, if they're feeling stress and pressure, it's going to cause there to be a temptation to cheat, to cut corners, to try to get an answer that they really don't deserve. So we've got to be careful in the way we approach it. Obviously, we want our students to know how important assessment is, but if you go on and on about testing and about all the negative things that can happen because of testing, there's no good result that can come out of that kind of action. So we won't, for example, bring attention to, this is testing day, so we're going to change our whole entire schedule. We're not doing that. We'll try to assess the children the best we can in the morning when they're fresh. There might be some minor changes to the daily schedule, just so we don't overload them. We don't want them stressing about a math test in the middle of assessment. So there will be some changes, but we don't want it to be things that jump out to the children. We don't, for example, want to as they're walking in to take their test, be handing them peppermints and saying, this will help your brain function better. They don't need that kind of pressure. That's not the way we function. Every single day of school, we are preparing for the assessments every day, right? So when they're sitting in my classroom in October, this is test prep, and I'm not going to wait till the last minute and say, now we really have to change the way we're doing things and let's all get stressed out about testing. We want the testing to be the best and most accurate reflection of what our students are capable of doing. And they really need you to speak that confidence to them. Hey, you've worked hard. You're going to be prepared for this. You just go in and give it your best, and your results are going to be a great reflection of what you've learned and how you've grown this year. All right. Now, again, the state of Indiana is very, very, very determined to protect the integrity of the assessments, and for obvious reasons. If it were your job or my job, we would want to do the same thing. And because they're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of schools and tens of thousands of students, it can sometimes feel rather impersonal and almost dehumanizing to deal with IDOE and all of the ways that they set their rules and expectations and everything. But honestly, there's a lot of thought that's gone into how they set up the security, test security, et cetera, et cetera. So let me just kind of run through what this is going to look like, and then what everyone's responsibility is for. And this training, by the way, is for everyone on campus. There is a separate training that is prepared by IDOE for those who are actually handling the test. So this is for everyone. If you're watching this, you're supposed to be watching this. Everyone is involved in it at least this much, right? So I mentioned the 3 tests that we'll be giving: iRead, iLearn, and iStep. And in each of those, it's possible that there will be 3 times that each of those is given. Once would just be our general testing session where students come in, they just take the test. But then some of our students have special accommodations because of an ISP. They have maybe extra time, or they're able to use different tools, or they'll have their earphones on and the test is read aloud to them as they take the test. So there are some students that will have to be tested with their accommodations, and they can't be tested with the general testing population. So, for example, we may have a small group, maybe just 2 or 3 students who are having the test read to them. They'll be tested together. There may be another group that has, or maybe just a single individual who has a separate accommodation. They would be tested separately as well. And then, of course, you know how it is. We can't wait for the day when everybody is present. We're just going to have to test according to our schedule. And those who miss will have to take a makeup assessment. So there are the 3: the general testing session, the accommodations, which might actually be several tests, administrations, and then the makeup test. So you get all of that and 3 tests and all the grades that have to be tested. There's going to be a lot of testing going on. Now, most of the assessment will take place online. This is the way the state of Indiana is handling it. The students will log on to the Chromebook, and the Chromebook will lock in. They can't do anything else with the Chromebook other than be on the testing site. That's it. So they can't pull up Google, they can't pull up the calculator, they can't do anything else with the computer other than take the test. The Chromebook will function as a kiosk. The test comes directly to them, and they are testing. Because of that, there's not a lot of secure test materials that will be floating around. In the old days, we had stacks, test booklets, etc., and all of those had to be maintained, carefully guarded, etc. There's not a whole lot of solid things, paper things that we've got to keep an eye out for, but there will be some. Some of our students, for example, will not be tested online because of accommodations. They will have a special privilege to test with a paper test booklet. And that test booklet is considered to be a secure item. It's got the official questions inside. No one would be permitted to look inside, to observe, to talk about any of those things, right? So here are the things that that I need everyone on campus to be aware of. First of all, those secure materials that are out there, they've got to be handled in a very specific and appropriate way, right? So I have the responsibility as the school's test coordinator of keeping all the secure materials cataloged and locked in a secure location. I will sign them out to the test administrators, and at the end of the day, they've got to be signed back in. So any test-related materials that would include the student ID cards with their STN, and the test booklets and some test administrator manuals. All of those things are supposed to be very carefully watched and kept under supervision. If by any chance you happen to come across a secure item, for example, somebody has taken their test booklet and it was set down, it was left on a desk, that has to be brought to me immediately. We can't, if that were to happen, I would have to file a report with the state right away, but we've got to watch out for secure materials. So this is something that we need everybody on campus looking out for. We need to make sure that anything that's out of place that's related to testing gets to me ASAP. It can't be left. You see something, oh, wait a minute. This is regarding testing. This can't be sitting here. This was obviously accidentally left out, or somebody dropped this, or whatever it might be. You got to get this to Brother Akers right away. For very obvious reasons, there should be no discussion about test material at all. Because the test is being given in different sections, as we mentioned, sometimes students will be assessed and their classmates won't be assessed until maybe later in the day or even the next day. It's very important that there be no conversation about items on the test. And in order to make sure that this is something that we don't have a problem with, teachers, faculty members, staff members should not ask questions of students about anything on the test. What'd you see? Were you surprised by things? What is it that, and it's one thing to say general questions, did you feel prepared? For example, I teach high school math. There's no way I'm not going to feel, the urge to ask my students when they come out of it, how'd you feel? Were you prepared for it? Were you ready for this? But no specific test material can be talked about, not even paraphrased, not numbers changed or stories changed a little bit. If it's on the test, it cannot be discussed. No screenshots, which of course technology in the testing room is a big no-no. Can't be cell phones, can't be smartwatches, other things like that in the test room as well. And those who are responsible for administering the tests will be looking out for that. But in no way can we discuss the test. An example of a test irregularity, these are real life examples. A couple of teachers were overheard discussing the test question. They had been walking around while administering the test, looked over the student's shoulder and had seen test questions, and later on outside the test they're saying, what'd you think about, and they discussed the specific test question. This is inappropriate, and other students could hear. It would of course violate the testing code and would invalidate potentially the students' test scores if they heard those things talked about in advance. So we've got to be very, very careful that we're not taking chances. We don't, for any reason at all, need to be discussing specific material on the test. Now, testing administrators and those who are proctoring the test will hear more specifically about this, but just so that we're all on the same page, it is not appropriate to coach a student during the assessment period at all, in any way. For example, one of the things that sent people to prison in in Atlanta, not only were they taking the paper tests and just erasing answers and putting the right ones on there, but they had signals, pre-arranged signals with the students where they were not necessarily giving an answer away, but that would say no, not that answer, or yes, that one. So if you're not in where the assessment takes place, this isn't going to be something that you really have to worry about. But just so we're on the same page, it would be very inappropriate to coach, to influence a student's answer in any way whatsoever. Now, if you happen to be on campus and you hear students talking about the test, discussing questions, etc., you can put an end to it right then and there, and I've got to hear about that. I've got to know. Students are obviously going to be told very specifically that they can't discuss the test in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But if you hear them talking about the test, if you hear, for example, somebody says, well, I was able to sneak and get my cell phone in, that's something you got to report, because I've got to report that to the state. Problem is that if we are found to have submitted invalid tests, that is going to reflect very poorly on the school. And of course, we have to report any testing irregularities. And the more frequently it's a kind of a catch-22, the more frequently we report test irregularities, the more closely the state of Indiana is going to examine what we're doing, right? So we don't want there to be test irregularities. It's illegal to not report them if they happen, but the more often they happen, the more likely it is that IDOE is going to show up and monitor the school in person and start looking for any areas that would make them feel uncomfortable or areas that they would say are inappropriate. So it's everyone's responsibility that testing is handled correctly. It's everyone's responsibility that we speak the right way about assessments. We should speak positively, not negatively, no complaining, eye rolling. We want our students to see it and recognize, hey, this is important. This is how we know where you are and what we need to be doing to help you get better. Now, after having watched this video, there is a test training form, security and integrity training form. You will need to sign and date that you have watched this video. And then there is a state document that is the test security and integrity agreement. And basically the material that I have covered in this test is on paper. You just read over it. It's one page. You read over it, sign, put your name at that. And I've got to hold on to that information in case the state were to show up and wanted to see the security and integrity agreement. So anyhow, thank you. Let's work hard every day to make sure that our students' test scores are a positive reflection on the work we're doing at CCS. And if our students get a little bit better every year, good things happen to the school, right? If our students don't make progress, we're going to be inviting closer scrutiny and some real negative consequences. So it's a day by day, every day. There's not a minute of instructional time that we can afford to waste. We've got to be teaching, pushing, reminding our students all the time that it's important that they learn and make progress. Thank you for watching. Be blessed.